Hello everyone. We've got a tiny video for a tiny system. This is a Shuttle XPC. This is based on either a mini ITX or FlexATX motherboard. And I've always been curious about these little things, so let's get into it. No banana for scale needed here. You can see this case is barely wider than that 5¼ inch drive, which happens to be a CD burner. Got our power and reset buttons here. And all sorts of ports, including firewire and optical audio. And I wonder if these are actually screws. I feel like they might be metal. Well, this was the mid-2000s, so they just might be decorative. This was a style at the time. And the case has these speed holes on each side, which seems to be this case's only source of ventilation. And despite the dirtiness, this case actually has a really nice finish. It's got that brushed steel look. And here's a look at the back of the machine. See, this thing may be small, but it sure is mighty. Just look at all those ports. It even has not one but two actual serial ports, as well as a parallel port. Those are interesting provisions on something that's clearly space constrained. Makes me think the designers may have had some industrial use case in mind. And we even have space for two peripheral cards. Most likely PCI only, but you never know, it might surprise us. And here's a close look at that label, which oddly enough is partially blocked by the case cover. But that is a Shuttle XPC, model SS51G. No date code though. Alright, let's get this thing open. Let's see, we have 3 thumb screws. Interesting that the heatsink is also held in with thumb screws, but one is not like the other. It has different knurling, and it's also loose. See, the other ones are loose. Yeah, sure are. This might have been somebody else's doing. In other words, not factory. Now, surrender your mysteries. Yeah, it's sure holding on tight to those mysteries. There we go. And hey, we got a hard drive. And for whatever reason, somebody lined the inside of the case with duct tape, but only at the back edge. I wonder if these things had problems with rattling. I'm struggling to think of any other reasons for that. Okay, you can now be officially surprised. This thing has AGP. Yeah, that's definitely an AGP slot. Well, how about that? That's the last thing I expected to find on such an ultra-compact machine. And I see they had to make some concessions, I guess, for airflow. This is actually an IDE cable here. It goes to the CD-ROM drive, and they just sliced it up. That does help keep it up out of the way, though. It also happens to be a dual-channel cable. So I guess you could put a zip drive or something in here, because there's obviously no space for another 5¼ inch drive. Let me get it out from under that power cable. What a funny looking thing. I'm just going to leave that in there so I don't got to cut those zip ties. Now let's make some space and pull this CD-ROM drive. Guessing it goes something like this. Sure does. Oh, maybe not. Got stuff attached to the bottom here. Oh, the entire drive cage comes out. It takes the hard drive with it. Let's get that disconnected. And that one does not have an oddly split cable. It does have one of those super handy pull tabs though. Should be free now. There we go. Oh, that's funny. That 3½ inch drive blank actually sits in a little metal box that screws into the drive bay. I guess those hex screws on the front do serve some purpose for holding that plastic on. Okay, now let's try to get this motherboard as unencumbered as possible. IDE cables in this small form factor are kind of a nightmare scenario. Though, interestingly enough, this power supply has SATA connectors, but the motherboard does not. Wonder why this fan connector has the tack wire, but it's not connected to the fan. This looks like somebody's custom modification with the shrink wrapping here, but that fan is branded Shuttle. So what's really going on? Let's see if there's any purpose to those thumb screws holding that fan in. Well, it makes it easier, though certainly not with that parallel connector in the way. Let's just unscrew that, since I can't reach the other side of the connector. Here, just go somewhere. There. There we go. Almost. Yeah. Okay, no, this has got to be a factory part. Or at least the metal surrounding is. Maybe somebody just replaced that fan. That is a pretty nice heat shrink job, though. I'll give him that. Okay, now I better pull that power supply, because it's in the way. Now I can finally get that parallel port out of there. I wonder what that Molex connector on a motherboard is all about. It takes the 12-volt rail. It's very odd. And that power supply appears to be an ATX standard, at least on the connector side. That was barely in there. And now you can more clearly see what's going on with that CPU heatsink. It's split in two, with 4 heat pipes in between them. And removal seems simple enough. I'm guessing these are tabs. Looks like they just hinge that way, or just come right off, okay. Well, not much in the way of thermal compound, is there? And that's actually a good thing on these Pentium 4s, since they like to stick to heat sinks so much and get pulled clean out of their sockets. Let's see what kind of Pentium 4 that is. Let's clean that thing up. And classic Pentium 4. Impossible to read on camera. But it is 1.8 gigahertz with 256K cache and 400 megahertz front side bus. SL5UK. Now let's do a pin check. No trouble. Let's keep that in there. And we don't even have to pull the RAM out in order to check it. Got value RAM, made by Kingston. 256 megs of DDR1. Now, time to clean up this funny looking thing. Surprisingly, it's not too dirty. Yeah, not bad at all. This whole system is pretty clean. Now let's get rid of what's left of that thermal grease. And I guess it stained the copper. That's not coming off. Oh well, it'll be fine. Now, should I bother trying to refresh the Northbridge heatsink? You know, if I had any other reason to pull this motherboard, I would. Let's see. Yeah, you know, the current thermal paste feels fine. That's good enough. I'm under time crunch. So let's get that CPU dressed. And this could be the coolest method of heatsink retention I've ever seen. It's certainly the most convenient, at least for a Pentium 4. Now let's see if that battery's any good. Whoa, it actually is! Well, that doesn't happen too often. It's low, but it's enough to keep the settings. Let's leave it in there, and we'll see how much drift is on the system clock. Now, moving on to the drives. The CD burner is made by Sony. And finally, we got some dates. Manufactured May 16th, 2002. No clue if it's original, but everything else seems to be from that time period. And the hard drive's a 40 gig Western Digital, very similar to one of my sacrificial hard drives. That's not a good sign. And I see this was also made in that time period, August 20th, 2002. It seems to track. And moving on to the power supply. This is actually a standard FlexATX form factor power supply. It feels pretty well built, very dense feeling. Looks kind of like a server power supply. It's no doubt very similar to one, though I'm sure it uses a quieter fan. And obviously, no edge connector here. Well, let's give it a test. And that power supply is barely bigger than the tester. Well, let's see what it does. And it does work. We're a little high on the 12-volt rail, but not crazy high. Let's see if that changes if I move the light bulb to the 12-volt rail. Whoa, what is going on with that light bulb? And this hard drive just stopped. I didn't even take it off of the 5-volt rail yet. I didn't think there was even a filament down there. What is going on here? I thought these two legs only went to that filament. Well, let's just move that over as I originally intended. If only I can see through my little blind spots. It's like the solar eclipse all over again. Oh. Yeah, there was something shorted at the base of this light bulb there. And the 12-volt rail just burned it out. Well, that's funny. And we dropped a little bit on the 12-volt rail. So yeah, I guess this power supply is fine. Let's just let it smoke test for 5 minutes. And that is one smokeless smoke test. This thing's good. And this thing is so baby, I never have to set my camera tripod this low. Okay, well, it's time to test this thing and find out what, if anything, it does. Sending power. Okay, it's polite enough to not turn on without the power button. Sounds good. And it is posting. It's got Windows 98 on it. I was expecting XP or something. Windows 98 on a Pentium 4. That's got to be fun. And it never likes my capture device. Sure, do your thing. And that clock says 8:12. It's actually 8:24. Assuming that's the same time zone, that drift is not too bad. Of course, I have no idea how long this thing has been sitting. But let's see what we have on here. What was old George up to? Advanced Sound Manager. Oh, AV rack. This thing must have Realtek sound. And it has one of those sys GPUs. Yeah, I used to have one of those back in the day. I think it might have been my first AGP card. That thing was terrible. So I imagine this one is equally terrible. There is not much on here. What were they doing with this thing? Let's see, what's in those documents? Well, nothing too telling in there. I don't know what kernel EX is. But I am curious. It's definitely an installer. Okay, that doesn't tell me what it is. Oh, it's some kind of open source software. Got the GPL. Oh, kernel EX. You know, the open source link just triggered my memory. Yeah, this is like a compatibility layer to try to run Windows NT binaries on Win9X with varying degrees of success. Let's cancel that. Let's see, when was that downloaded? October 23rd, 2012. Yeah, somebody was doing something special with this thing, and that date is actually correct. Let's see what's on the root of the drive. Actually, no, let's see what's in the recycle bin. I'm gonna go through your garbage. Oh, they were trying to install Firefox 16 on this thing. I'm fairly certain that's well outside the realm of Win9X. That might have been what they were trying to use kernel EX for. Okay, let's proceed to the root directory. Barely used at all. This thing's getting weird, and it thinks it has a 5 1/4 inch floppy drive. That's just a BIOS setting. Okay, C drive. Let's see how old that scandisk.log is. Same date as that installer. Okay, are there any clues in the My Documents folder? It's like somebody set this thing up and just never used it. Okay. Let's see, let's get some details. See the rest of those timestamps. Okay, so the Winstall actually is from 2002, so I'm betting that's original. I guess somebody at the time was trying to get some life out of a decade-old computer. And obviously, they didn't get far. Well, let's see if that CD-ROM does anything. Well, at least opens. Ooh, that sounds like a yes. And yes, indeed it works. Okay, let's not install AOL. Oh, keep exiting. Forgot how hard they try to keep you. They even force you to have a shortcut on your desktop without even asking. Okay, now, time to answer this question. Are these screws decorative, functional, or both? Let's see. Oh, it actually turns and didn't break. Yeah, that's a real screw. It had me curious because a lot of stuff in this style used fake screws that were just plastic coated in some chrome stuff. Now, does that panel come off? Yes, it does. Very easily. Interesting. So you could actually put some little graphics behind there, because this thing is really translucent. Well, that's cool. And you knew I was going to do it. Defaced. And here the white backing came off with it, although it is easily removable. Well, that's novel. Okay, now let's see how well this case will clean up. This thing has a really nice finish, so I'd really like to see it in better condition. Let's just start with the old Windex on a paper towel routine. Yeah, it's taking some of those scuffs off. I think this here might actually just be a scratch. Well, just to say I tried, let's see if the magic eraser can take it off. And it's definitely helping. Yeah, that's a lot better. I might as well just use this on the rest of the case. Pretty sure this is raw aluminum, so it's not like it's going to hurt anything. Okay, well, apart from the spots that are actually damaged, this thing turned out great. And I did the magnet check. I confirmed this is indeed aluminum, or some other non-ferrous metal. It's looking good. And you know, Shuttle is still around. They're still making these tiny little systems. And to my complete surprise, they still have a section on their website dedicated to this exact model, complete with specs, drivers, and everything. You gotta love when manufacturers still give love to their legacy products. Also gotta love the generosity of the fine people on Patreon, as well as the channel supporters. They help keep the E-Waste hauls coming in, and thus keep the videos going. And that includes one very special system, which has demanded my full attention. The patrons know what it is. I sure hope it'll be finished soon because I can't wait to share that adventure. But that's all for this one. Thanks for watching.